Hello, and welcome to the Wheel of Time Rewind podcast. I am your host, Dylan Stoll, and as always, I'm joined by my friend here, Michael Whifford.
Hey, so excited to be here today. We only have like 4 more days,
Oh my God.
3 more days until we get to see Wheel of Time.
It's so serene right now because, it's crazy to think that we're that close to actually seeing Wheel of Time on screen. Oh, so excited.
I know, I was just thinking this week about the first time I saw Lord of the Rings, which was at your house for your birthday, and that was like my first introduction to like fantasy, real fantasy. And after that, ended up going home and getting the book and started reading that. And actually, you started reading it too, and our friend Justin started reading it as well. And just the impact of watching that on screen and how that turned me on to fantasy literature in general. And I'm just so excited because I've read this series so many times, and I finally get to see it on the screen. And I know it's not going to be perfect, but I'm just so excited.
So you can tell we're obviously excited about this. We hope you guys out there are all excited about this as well. But let's get into our podcast here, and we're going to start off with some formalities here. We are going to ask you guys, and we haven't asked this before, but if you like the show, if you could please leave a rating or review on whatever platform that you're listening to us on, we'd greatly appreciate it. Also, if you want to get in contact with the show, send us an email at wheeloftimerewind@gmail.com. Or if you want to send us a direct message or tag us in anything and you're on social media, on Instagram and Twitter, we're at WOTRewind. And again, if you contact the show as far as a direct message or anything or have anything you want to share, we'll share that out here on the podcast. So let's dive into our recap of our reading for this past week here. Mike, where are you at with your reading through of the Wheel of Time?
Really not any farther than I was last week, to be honest with you. I've been listening to so many podcasts, and I've been doing so much reading for school that I haven't really found the time. Unfortunately, I've been slowly chipping away, but I'm still in book 4, Shadows Rising, so I'm going to be there probably for a while, and I think afterwards I'm going to just step away for just a little bit from the Wheel of Time series and as we digest all the episodes and stuff. But what about you, Dylan?
Yeah, so I have finished book 4, Shadow Rising. And like Mike said, yeah, I know, right? Like Mike said, I think that this is a logical place for us to kind of step off of the train right now, just to kind of soak in these episodes as they come out and really think about how they relate to the first few books that they're supposed to be portraying here. So I stepped away from reading the series as well for a short time. Now I'm going to take a little pause there and let Mike catch up, as well as just take some time to enjoy some other interests that I have in literature and podcasts as well. Without further ado, we are going to get into something that Mike wants to talk about.
Yes. So last episode we had someone kind of talk about or a couple episodes ago, we had someone talk about a few Edmonds Field 5 album titles, and we talked a little bit about different songs, and I just couldn't get this. I've just been thinking about it as I've listened to music throughout the last couple weeks, and I just would replace some words and song titles or something else. And so I had a couple I wanted to share. So obviously most people know Nirvana. And so, their song Smells Like Teen Spirit. And I was thinking the Edmonds Field 5 would totally do, and this would probably be a Rand-fronted song, Smells Like Sheep Herding.
Okay.
Egwene would take a riff or take a page out of the Beatles book and do Hey Rand.
Okay.
I also had a Howling Trolloc. And then I can't think of something for I Can't Get No Satisfaction, but I'm sure there's something you can change there to make that work for the Wheel of Time series. But anyway, I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on different song titles or album titles that would be kind of Wheel of Time inspired or punny, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's just always fun to hear. So we are going to get into this week's episode, what is going to be the title of this episode, Mike?
So this is our Season 1 forecast. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of just go episode by episode using the information we know from the episode title and the image stills and the trailers, and we're just going to talk about what we think is going to happen in these episodes and maybe some things that they may cut out as well. Obviously, we do not know the titles for episode 7 and 8, so those are going to kind of be complete just
wild speculation.
Yeah.
We don't know anything for certain, like Mike said. All we're going to be bringing to the table is our knowledge of the books, our knowledge of the episode titles, and the stills, and the trailer, and all of that information. So I do just want to issue a spoiler warning, just in case, like, you don't want to know anything about these episodes. You just go into the show as a open book, a blank canvas, ready to soak in everything. If you don't want to hear any of that stuff, we thank you for listening so far. And we also are going to continue on now with our episode 1 forecast, season 1. So, Mike, take it away.
All right, so episode 1 for the series is going to be called Leave Taking. Obviously, this is going to take place in the Two Rivers, and it's going to be us getting to know our characters. Moraine and Lan are going to show up. We're going to meet, all the fun friends, Pat and Fane. There's been stills with Pat and Fane and Matt together in it. Mm-hmm. I was actually really excited to see that because they've done a really nice job of not showcasing him at all.
Right.
So it's going to be them and the Two Rivers, Trollocs attacking, them ending up leaving. So that one I think is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, that one's really straightforward. The one thing I'm going to add in there is that, again, like, we haven't really seen too much of this, but, like, there's so many rumors floating around about other things that might happen that don't necessarily happen in the books in this first episode, such as Perrin and his potential betrothment or marriage, and then killing off of his wife at Winter Night. So it's, like, pretty crazy to think about that. But everything else, I feel like, is probably going to go pretty smoothly, pretty page for page almost, in this first episode here. The one thing I'm going to mention, though, is, like, those stills we saw of the Aiel War. I wouldn't be surprised, like, if we get, like, flashbacks to that when Tam is in his fever dream being brought to town by Rand. So, like, that's, like, my kind of prediction as far as, like, where we actually see those. Is, like, we see them through Tam's eyes, almost. Because he served in the military when he went out of the Two Rivers and he fought in the Aiel War. Became a blade master and, gave his sword to Rand to lead the charge at the end of this episode here, probably. But also, I think we're going to see just some sexy time going on between Rand and Egwene. I think we're going to see significantly more destruction of Emond's Field in this episode than there were in the books.
Well, yeah, they want this to be kind of like a battle, and, like, very much just from the images, they want this to be on the level of Game of Thrones, so they want the action to be ramped up a bit.
Right. But like Mike said, we're going to get Moraine and Lan coming in, slaying Trollocs with fireballs and the sword, and then basically telling our Emond's Field 5, Nynaeve, Egwene, Rand, Perrin, and Matt, we got to get out of here. But I think one thing that has been done very well so far, like you mentioned, Mike, is how they are not necessarily showcasing Pod and Fane. Like, they're kind of keeping him in the dark where, Friends of the Dark like to live. So
where he belongs, really.
Yeah, where he belongs. But yeah, I think that nothing too crazy is going to be happening in season 1, episode 1, Leave Taking, that we don't expect.
Now, I want to ask a question here.
Okay.
What do you think they're going to be doing some flashbacks of Logain, or, like, maybe not flashbacks, but, like, sort of showing his progress, sort of akin to this as well, sort of at the same time?
I personally don't think that's going to be happening in episode 1. We'll get to that point where I think we're going to see Logain, but I think that if we see him in episode 1, I'll be a little surprised. But it might be smart to kind of do that if they're going to set him up as something more than what he was in the books. So, we'll see.
Yeah. They may actually... my thought was, as I've been, looking at the clips and then bringing him up more and more, is that they may slowly interweave him into the story. And, right when it seems like maybe him or Rand is getting about to... Or, like, one of them's going to get proclaimed in two separate places, So, like, even when you finally realize, like, oh, it's either Rand or Logain, and then they end up stilling Logain, and Rand ends up becoming the Dragon Reborn. That was just a thought I had this week as I was, like, just looking at images. I was like, they could try doing, like, they're going to try muddying up who the Dragon Reborn is with the Edmonds Field 5, and then you also start seeing Logain, and so the audience might start thinking, well, maybe he's the Dragon Reborn, and then it becomes like a dual race there to see who it is.
Yeah, I just don't see that happening in episode 1, but who knows? We'll see how it goes. Jumping into episode 2. The title of this episode is called Shadows Waiting. So, Mike, what do you think is in store for us in this episode?
Oh, man. Shadow Logoth, Perrin figuring out that he is a wolf brother, Children of the Light. I think this is where we'll get introduced to them as well. And you get, Pat and Fane a little bit more involved in this episode. So I think we're going to get a little bit all of it. And I think also, too, that we'll get the concept of dark friends in this episode. So there's going to be a lot of stuff happening in this one, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to be very curious to see how long they actually spend in Shadow Logoth, because I think that's exactly what we're getting with this episode. As you know, if you've read the books, Shadow Logoth basically means shadows waiting. So that's why the title of this episode is Shadows Waiting. I think we're going to see Matt getting his dagger in this episode. I agree. I think this is where we're going to see the fracturing of our group. That this will be where Egwene and Perrin go off separately. This will be where Matt and Rand, and then Nynaeve, Lan, and Moraine all go off separately. And I think we will see the Children of the Light in this episode, like you said. I don't know if we're going to get the full Perrin becoming a wolf brother in this episode or not, but we shall see. I'm curious to see also if you think that they're going to introduce the Tuathawan, or the Traveling People, or Tinkers, as they're also known, in this episode, or if it'll be in the next one.
I think what they'll do, because, I imagine these are going to be pretty long episodes, obviously, and I think you'll see at the end of this episode where they do splinter off in their groups, and you'll get, like, a flash to, like, that Pat and the Children of the Light there. I think it's Emin Valda killing the Aes Sedai and sort of getting an introduction to them. So when you meet them next episode, leading into next episode, I think you're going to see that's where you'll see the Tuathawan, the Children of the Light, Wolf Brother, some of that progression.
Okay, so going into episode 3, which will be the final episode that gets dropped on the 19th. So these first 3, they're going to be a little mini binge session that are gonna supply hours and hours of entertainment. So I'm excited. But episode 3 is called A Place of Safety, and here's where I'm very interested to hear what you have to say, Mike.
Like I just said, I think that other episode there, Shadow Logoth, is going to lead into this episode. We're meeting the Children of the Light, Tuathawan, and I think that place of safety, while it is, you brought this up before, Dylan, referred to as Tar Valon in the books quite often, or it's equated, like Tar Valon's the safest place to be. I think we're going to see them, like Perrin and Egwene, getting into the steading, the abandoned steading there. I think, even with the Tuathawan having that feeling of safety, for Matt and Rand, it's the, like, traveling, and then they're stopping at these places and, like, feeling safe, like, when they're there. And so I think you're going to have a couple of different, like, areas where safety is felt, and then it's at the end of each one, the bubble's going to get burst. Either with Tom getting attacked by the Murdral, or Dark Friends, or the Children of the Light.
Yeah, so I was going to tell you that I think the place of safety is going to be referred to as a steading. Because, like, if they're skipping out on Camelin, I'm trying to think about, like, where they could have the group meet Loyal. And so I don't know if they're going to have Perrin and Egwene meet Loyal at that abandoned steading or not, or if they have Matt and Rand just meet Loyal in a different city, in a different inn.
Yeah, I think it'll be Matt and Rand.
I think so as well. I think that will probably happen after Tom is separated from the group, but we shall see. I do think, like you said, that we're going to see the Children of the Light and Perrin face off in this episode. I think that we're going to see the Tuathawan in this episode, definitely. If we don't see them in the previous one, we will see them in this one. I think that you'll start to see probably the dagger take more hold over Matt as the series progresses from this point forward as well. So you'll see him being more and more paranoid. You'll see Matt, just not really be an enjoyable character for a while. But we'll also see Moraine and Nynaeve and Lan, and I think this episode is also going to be where you see Nynaeve heal Moraine, because we saw that happening in the trailer there. And so I think that this will be where Nynaeve puts her healing talents to use, uses the one power to heal Moraine, despite her not liking her very much. So, anything else you want to add for that episode?
No, I think you did a really nice job putting a bow on that one.
All right, episode 4, The Dragon Reborn. Go ahead, Mike.
Ooh. So this one's tough. Like, when you read the title, you're like, oh my gosh, so that means Rand's going to come out, right? Like I alluded to before, just a possible theory. I don't really even put too much stock in it, but like them slowly feeding us little bits of Logain throughout, and then maybe leading to a head here. Between Rand or Logain possibly becoming, the Dragon Reborn in like 2 different settings. I don't really put a ton of stock in that, but I think in this episode what we'll get is a lot of flashbacks. So we'll get flashbacks to like Moraine Sedai and the prophecy that she was in the presence of, and learning about the Dragon Reborn, and then you get the Aiel War maybe too, a little bit more, and like Rand being born. You get a little more explanation for the Dragon Reborn in this episode. At least that's my thoughts on it.
I think that's a great prediction, because I think up to this point we're not really gonna get a thorough explanation of who is the Dragon Reborn and why is it very significant. But I think this episode, like you said, will go more into that backstory about the Creathon cycle that we know of, the prophecy of Jatara when Moraine and Siwan were there, all of that stuff going on there. But I do also feel like this episode we're going to get a good look at Logain. Maybe Logain proclaiming himself the Dragon Reborn, maybe Moraine and Nynaeve and Lan meeting up with these red and green sisters to help them against Logain, because I think we saw some stills or maybe even parts of a trailer where there was Moraine with those other Aes Sedai in what looked like Logain's area, but it looked like there was another person with them as well. So if that was Nynaeve, that'll be interesting, because it'll add an extra layer for her to see the Aes Sedai working in the wild and everything. But
yeah, I like that.
That's kind of what I'm seeing as far as episode 4 goes. But again, this is so cool, because from this point on, looking at the episode titles from Dragonmount, we can't really tell too much about what's coming, because we don't know all the changes that will be happening. And it's kind of exciting to think about as well, because it puts us, the fans, in that seat of, okay, what's coming next? I roughly know the roadmap, but where's this actually going?
Yeah. What are they choosing to include, and what are they leaving out?
Exactly. I think right now is also just a good time, since we're talking about the Dragon Reborn, just to put a bow on this, because Rafi himself came out and basically said point blank, Rand is going to be the dragon. What he said exactly was, book readers know who the dragon is. That's not going to change. So
exactly.
I think, just putting a bow on that right there. Moving on to episode 5, Blood Calls Blood. So I really want to hear what you think this means. So what are we seeing with Blood Calls Blood?
What I think is going to happen here is, so you're going to get the group meeting back up, and they're going to go to a waygate. And I think this is where we're going to get them using the waygate, and they end up meeting up with the Black Wind.
Mashinshin? Or I think it's Machinchin or something like that. The Black Wind, yeah.
And I think it's going to be kind of that sort of adventure through the ways and getting to, Fal Dara.
Okay, I like that.
But I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that.
So yeah, I was thinking Blood Calls Blood. I'm thinking about how Podden Thane was kind of the hound for the Dark One, and could like sense where the three boys were in the books. I'm also like thinking about like how they talk about like the old blood being important and stuff like that. And so I don't know where this was going. I like your idea of Ma Chin Chen and the ways, and if that's the case, then we will meet Loyal in this episode or one or two episodes beforehand. So it'll be really interesting to see like where Loyal kind of pops out here. But yeah, I think that's a good idea about the ways.
Yeah, what made me think of that was, with the title there, Blood Calls Blood, and like you had said with Pada and Fane, but also too like when the Black Wind is, near them, they can hear the voices and
being all creepy, being like, ooh, blood so cold, blood so sweet.
Yes, exactly.
being all creepy as hell.
Yes. Oh goodness.
All right. So yeah, in case you forgot, like how weird Ma Chin Chen actually is, like go back to those the times when they've traveled the ways and they see Ma Chin Chen or hear Ma Chin Chen, and it sends shivers down your spine. It's just so creepy the way that this thing talks. Episode 6 though, it's called The Flame of Tar Valon. What do you think's going on in this one, Mike?
So in this one, it could be a couple of things. It could be that, like, when they get to Faldara, they end up meeting up with Suan Sanche, the Flame of Tar Valon, Amarylline Seat. Mm-hmm. Or it could be you get more of Moraine's training and, like, you get introduced to the whole dynamics in the White Tower. With all those images where you've seen Moraine in the Hall of the Tower with Suan. So maybe more of those images and that side of things. And so you get a little bit more of the story, like them meeting, and getting to Faldara and then also cutting to Tar Valon.
Yeah, I think that's a good prediction because I think this one here, being titled The Flame of Tar Valon, it's obviously going to be about the Aes Sedai. It's obviously going to be about the Amarylline Seat. But what I feel like we're going to see with this is we're going to see a lot of like what we get at the start of the Great Hunt with Swan being there in Faldara. I feel like we're going to see her in Faldara at this part here. I think we might get some of her in the tower and everything like that, and maybe like her referencing taking the journey to go to Faldara. But something else I was thinking about is that they are making Min a Borderlander in the series from what I've kind of like seen. And so if they do that and they make Min kind of like a Borderlander warrior woman, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see Min in either this episode or the next one as well while they're in that Faldara area. But I do think, like, I don't know, like if they're doing Faldara and like part of, because they are doing parts of book 2 and parts of book 3 in this season, we know that. But like I'm trying to think about like what we've kind of said so far could be from books 2 and 3. And like this part, if the Amarylline Seat comes to Faldara, that would be from book 2 and kind of give us that introduction there. But I'm also wondering like if they would really do that before they get the Horn of Valir from the Eye of the World. But I don't know.
I don't know either. But you saying that and us not knowing the title for the last 2 episodes makes me think that how those last 2 episodes might go down is like episode 7 is where they go into the Blight and then they get the Horn of Valir and come back, and then that last episode is where we set up and we include elements from book 2 and book 3 like we talked about, Egwene and Nynaeve going to the tower, maybe with the Amarylline Seat, Pada and Fane stealing the horn and all the group chasing after him. And then we also get the Shan Chan, like, at the very end, like I had said before, kind of, like, stepping onto land and collaring some poor girl, turning her into a Damani.
Yeah, I think that we're not going to have 2 full episodes in the Blight. So what I'd be interested to see is, like, if they do, like, episode 7, where maybe Rand does a little sword training with Lan in Faldara as well, practicing learning the sword and everything, so he's not just an archer, even though every promotional item we've seen with Rand on it has been with him with a bow.
Yeah.
I think that could be part of what we see in that one, but again, like, oh man, I don't know if we're gonna see 2 full episodes in the Blight, and because I think how the series will probably end will be with Rand defeating the Forsaken out at the Eye of the World, using Sidene and everything, and just becoming aware that he is in fact a male channeler, and that all this talk about the Dragon Reborn from Moraine was all secretly about him. But I don't know, man. I think there's a lot of stuff within like the last 5 episodes where even though we've read the books, we don't know what's going to happen because of the way that they're doing this. And like I said, that's exciting to me. I'm trying to like anticipate some of these changes and everything, but I don't know. Then that's something that's very interesting to say is I don't know. So moving on here, we kind of blitzed through the last 2 episodes there, episode 7 and episode 8, because we have such little information to go on. We don't have the episode titles of those yet there. So what are some things, Mike, now that we've kind of like walked through or done like a little forecast of episode or of the first season here, what are some things that you feel like we are not going to see?
I think we're not going to see, like we've talked about before, Camelin. I don't think we're going to see Camelin at all.
Agreed.
I think we may... I also don't think we're going to see Baerlon. I think we may see like small towns or villages as they, try to escape, and then they end up at Shadow Logoth.
Yeah, and like part of that, real quick, sorry to interrupt, but part of what's interesting about that is like in the trailer so far, we did see like Matt and Rand looking around like this bigger, larger city. So what city do you think that's going to be? Or is it going to be like Devon Ride or Tarn Ferry or Wash Hill or like one of those other Two Rivers cities that are bigger than Emmons Field?
Well, I was thinking that could still be Whitebridge.
Okay. So you think like they'll still have that part where they go to Whitebridge and Tom fights the Murdral and gets injured?
Yeah, I do think so. And I think, they'll just circumvent Camelin some way, shape, or form. Because they talked about how they could have gone in another direction with that farmer at that one point.
Right.
And then they chose to continue to Camelin, so maybe this time they just go out of the way with the farmer. And
yeah, and like even if they have it so like they meet Loyal in Whitebridge or they meet Loyal wherever Tom does end up sacrificing himself at, I think that would still be fine. I'm very curious to see exactly like how this. Very excited for the 19th.
And speaking of that, just for our listeners and for you, Dylan, if you hadn't seen this yet, Amazon's actually releasing a animated prequel series to the Wheel of Time as well that explains like the breaking of the world.
Ooh.
So we'll have an extra episode to talk about that too.
Oh man, I did not hear that. That is exciting news for me. When is that coming out?
The 19th.
Gotta love November 19th. It's going to become a holiday.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Yes, it is.
I've already heard like tales of different Wheel of Time fans on Facebook and other social medias being like, oh, I've already taken off of work for the 19th. I'm staying home all day and watching Wheel of Time on repeat.
Not a terrible idea. I'll have to think about that one.
Yeah, right? So is there anything else you want to cover really quick before we get out? Oh, I guess there's something I want to talk about. Do you think we'll see the Green Man?
As much as I would love to see the Green Man, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I really wish that we would, but again, like you said, I have a feeling we're not going to. So this is something like Mike and I had a little discussion about before we started recording today, is we both feel like they're kind of taking this Wheel of Time story that we know and trying to ground it a little bit more in reality, and making it less fantastical in some ways. And like parts of what we're seeing with that is like if you watch the trailers, like when you see, or look at the stills as well, when you see Perrin and Egwene with the Tuathawan, with the traveling people, they're not necessarily bright and really eye-destroyingly clashing with their colors like they're kind of described as in the books and everything. And they look just more like a traveling caravan of like gypsies almost there. But what we're kind of getting at with this is like I kind of feel like they're giving it more of like a gritty, grounded like take on the Wheel of Time with some of the things. I mean, obviously we're still getting the one power, we're still getting magic, we're still getting Trollocs and Murdral and all those fantastical elements, but some of the other things that are kind of like tertiary important to like a fantasy setting, kind of like the Green Man, like who's almost like an Ent basically from Lord of the Rings. He's not probably a priority.
Yeah, and speaking of your grounded in reality, and they're definitely trying not that the series was an adult before, but they're definitely trying to make it more mature. In some ways, like they're making the White Cloaks go from these kind of like annoyances or like just like White Cloaks in the book to like, oh crap, like they're dangerous.
Yeah.
And now Egwene and Bran, like, oh, it's so cute. Like, man, they're gonna get it on.
Right. And like some of these changes I'm actually really excited about. Like the White Cloaks being a legitimate threat is very interesting to me because you have, like Mike said, this group who's basically like a little fly buzzing around your ear the whole book series. And you're like, okay, get away from me. And then now you have it where, okay, they're killing Aes Sedai, burning them at the stake, and collecting their rings and drinking wine and smiling while they do it. They are maniacal. They are evil. But I mean, I'm excited to see like this more adult version almost of Wheel of Time. So that's very, very cool for me. All right. Well, with all of that said, what can we expect for next week's episode, Mike?
And you mean next week's episode?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a trick question. So go for it.
So obviously we'll be doing an episode. We're planning on doing an episode on each of the episodes that they released for the Wheel of Time series. And as I just added on to our plate there, an episode for the animated prequel as well. Whew, it's going to be a lot.
It's going to be a lot. We're going to have 4 episodes drop next week because we're going to do every single episode for its own recording. And like Mike said, we're also going to do an episode on that animated prequel. So we'll have 4 individual episodes. That way, all of you guys can listen to them if you want to in a binge, kind of like you binge through the TV series, or I'm imagining most of you will be binging through the TV series. Or if you want to take it more slow and steady and just go one at a time, it won't be any rush for you to do that. For fear of like anything being spoiled or anything like that, because we will separate everything out so well. And once we get into the episodes starting next week, where we're actually talking about the TV series here, I think like we should probably just make like a blanket, like we're going to use our book knowledge and talk about some things from the books too, but we're going to be mostly focusing on this television show. So like if you haven't like watched the television episode that we're going to be talking about, then probably don't listen to the podcast where we talk about that particular episode, but it'll be good. I'm excited because it's going to be amazing to see this series finally come to fruition, finally get on the silver screen here, or no, the small screen, I guess you could call it, even though like TVs now aren't super small. But I'm excited about it. So before we get out of here, my fiance Amy actually had a question for us all here, and I want to hear your answer as well, Mike. So if you could have it either way, would you rather see the Wheel of Time put forth like a television show like we're getting now, or as a movie series?
Oh, a television show. Just because the movie series, I feel like they wouldn't do... Oh, man, actually, hold on. This is tougher than I thought. Because I was originally going to say TV show because you get so many more hours of content.
Right.
So you can cover more things. But if you did, well... Yeah, I'd say a TV series. I'm talking myself into it and out of it. TV series because you get so many more hours of content. Whereas like a movie series, yes, like the Lord of the Rings series was 9 hours, but they had to skip a lot of things in those books too. And these books are, there's a lot more of them, and no one's going to sit through 15 3-hour movies except for us.
Yeah.
Whereas like a TV series, like you could go for 12, 13, 14 seasons and have each season be like 8 hours long.
So I have the same exact answer. I was like, give me a television show like on the level of what we're getting now, or like on the level of Game of Thrones, where it's like a highly produced television show that's going to flesh it out a little bit more. Because I feel like if we got a Wheel of Time movie, then everything would be even more condensed. Everything would be even more in a rush almost, because you wouldn't have the time to do the pacing that is necessary to match the character growth and everything that we're getting on screen for a television show like it was done in the books, because Robert Jordan took his time. It obviously ended up being a little bit longer than I think he even originally thought it would be. But to get to the point where it did wrap up in the books, being at 15 novels, including the prequel novella, I feel like the television option is our best chance at seeing as close to Robert Jordan's vision as we could possibly get, because of the added time and everything. But I would definitely be excited if they made a movie too. That's not to say I wouldn't be. But what are your guys' thoughts? Like, let us know, like, if you would rather have a Wheel of Time television series like we're getting, or a Wheel of Time movie franchise. So with that said, it is time for us to get on out of here. So we will see you on the other side of November 19th, and we'll see you at the next turning of the wheel. Goodbye.
Bye. Oh good, you're still here. So I just want to share my rendition of Hey Rand. Hey Rand, why are you so sad? Just remember, you have the flame in the void. It's not your fault that Tam adopted you. Well, found you on a frozen battlefield. Someday you will be happy, or just have another voice in your head. Yeah, maybe I'll add some more lyrics later. Thank you for sticking around for this extra bonus content that's probably terrible.